Welcome to Comic Facts. Today we're diving into a trend that quietly reshaped both comics and film over the past few decades, the rise of the anti-hero. This is one of those videos you can put on in the background while you work, study, or just relax, letting the ideas wash over you without needing to watch every frame. And trust me, there's a lot to unpack. When you think of a superhero, the image that probably comes to mind is someone bright, idealistic, maybe even a little flawless. But by the 1990s, audiences were starting to crave something different. They wanted heroes who were messy, conflicted, and human in ways traditional archetypes weren't. Enter the anti-hero. Characters like Eric Draven in The Crow, Blade and Blade, and later figures like Wolverine, the Punisher, and Deadpool aren't perfect. They don't play by society's rules. They make hard choices, live with consequences, and often operate in moral gray zones that make us question what heroism really means. And here's the fascinating part. Audiences didn't just accept these characters, they embraced them. They resonated with their struggles, their flaws, and their relentlessness. These were heroes who reflected a world that wasn't clean, neat, or easy to navigate. In this video, we're going to explore how the anti-hero evolved in comics and film, why this archetype became so compelling in the 90s and early 2000s, and how it continues to influence storytelling today. We'll trace the path from gothic vigilantes like The Crow, to action-driven warriors like Blade, to the broader wave of morally complex protagonists dominating modern media. Along the way, we'll break down what makes an anti-hero compelling, how creators balance darkness and relatability, and why audiences can't seem to get enough of them. By the end, you'll see that the rise of the anti-hero isn't just a trend. It's a reflection of shifting cultural tastes, narrative expectations, and the evolving relationship between heroes and the people who watch them. So settle in, put this on in the background, lean back, and let's explore why broken, complicated, morally gray characters became the heroes we never knew we needed. To understand the anti-hero in modern comics and film, we need to go back further than the 1990s. Anti-heroes didn't appear overnight. They evolved from centuries of storytelling, from literature to pulp fiction, before landing on the comic page and eventually the big screen. At its core, an anti-hero is a protagonist who lacks conventional heroic traits. They may be morally ambiguous, reluctant, flawed, or even deeply damaged. Unlike traditional heroes, they aren't defined by their idealism or their ability to always make the right choice. Instead, they are defined by their struggle, their survival, and the weight of the world around them. Literary history gives us early examples. Characters like Shakespeare's Hamlet, who is indecisive and tormented, or Milton's Satan in Paradise Lost, a charismatic, complex figure who defies the simple hero-villain binary. These stories showed audiences that a protagonist could be compelling without being morally perfect. Fast forward a few centuries, and we find anti-heroes in 19th and early 20th century novels, the brooding, Byronic hero, or the dark, morally complicated detectives of noir fiction. These characters were shaped by tragedy, obsession, and alienation, traits that would echo loudly in the anti-heroes of modern comics. Then came pulp fiction and early crime stories. Characters like the Shadow or Doc Savage weren't exactly morally gray, but they operated outside societal norms. They bent the rules, took justice into their own hands, and existed on the margins of law and order. These stories trained audiences to root for someone who wasn't conventionally good, as long as they followed their own code. When comics emerged in the 1930s and 40s, superheroes were mostly clear-cut paragons of virtue. Superman, Captain America, Wonder Woman, shining symbols of idealized morality. But even then, cracks appeared. Characters like Batman operated in shadows, carried deep trauma, and skirted the law. While still heroic, they planted the seeds for what audiences would later crave. The 1970s and 80s accelerated this shift. Social upheaval, political distrust, and a growing appetite for realism pushed creators to explore darker themes. Wolverine, the Punisher, and early X-Men stories introduced heroes who were violent, conflicted, and sometimes ruthless. They weren't perfect, and that was the point. By the 1990s, the stage was set. Audiences had been primed by decades of flawed protagonists. Films were ready to embrace darker, more adult stories, and characters like Eric Draven in The Crow and Blade emerged as the natural evolution of this long tradition. These films didn't invent the anti-hero, they brought it into the mainstream. They proved audiences could care deeply about protagonists who were emotionally scarred, morally ambiguous, and operating outside traditional justice, as long as their motivations felt real. By the 1990s, the anti-hero had moved from the margins straight into the cultural spotlight, nowhere more clearly than in comics and their film adaptations. The Crow is a defining example. Eric Draven is driven by grief, rage, and love lost. His mission is personal, not ideological. The world he inhabits is dark, broken, and indifferent, a reflection of his own internal devastation. The film never presents his journey as glamorous. It's mournful, exhausting, and emotionally raw. Revenge isn't celebrated, it's portrayed as a burden. Eric isn't trying to save the world, he's trying to survive his pain. Blade represents a different kind of anti-hero. Where Eric is driven by emotion, Blade is driven by necessity. He kills to protect humanity, but he does so in isolation, without recognition or approval. His discipline, detachment, and rigid personal code place him outside traditional heroism. In comics, this shift was everywhere. Wolverine surged in popularity throughout the 90s, violent, brooding, unpredictable. The Punisher embraced brutality as justice. Spawn fused gothic horror with moral ambiguity. Even Batman, especially under Frank Miller's influence, leaned deeper into psychological complexity and ethical compromise. What united these characters was their willingness to challenge expectations. They lived in worlds where good and evil blurred. They struggled with trauma, guilt, and consequence, and audiences responded, not despite those flaws, but because of them. Cinematically, The Crow and Blade visualize what comics had been exploring for years. Rain-soaked streets, shadow-drenched alleyways, industrial soundtracks, style-reinforced substance. The mood was the message. The timing was perfect. The 90s were defined by cultural cynicism, urban decay, and distrust of authority. Antiheroes reflected that reality. They didn't promise easy answers. They acknowledged the mess. By the end of the decade, the antihero wasn't niche anymore. It had become a dominant lens through which audiences understood heroism itself. By the turn of the millennium, the antihero was no longer an exception, it was the rule. Deadpool emerged as a fully realized antihero, chaotic, irreverent, self-aware. Beneath the humor was trauma, pain, and consequence. His refusal to take anything seriously was itself a coping mechanism. Wolverine's stories grew deeper, exploring mortality, loyalty, and identity. This arc culminated in Logan, a bleak, grounded examination of aging, regret, and redemption. It was the natural endpoint of decades of anti-hero evolution. Cinema followed suit. V for Vendetta explored vigilante morality on a political scale. The Dark Knight framed Batman's ethical compromises as central conflict. Even mainstream franchises embraced moral ambiguity. Audiences responded because these characters felt real. They failed, they doubted, they paid for their choices. Anti-heroes spread beyond comics and film. Television embraced them fully. The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Dexter. Video games adopted morally complex protagonists. Storytelling itself shifted. The through line is clear. Without The Crow and Blade, this evolution doesn't happen the same way. They proved darkness and emotional weight weren't liabilities. They were strengths. The anti-hero's influence now extends far beyond storytelling. Fashion, fandom, cosplay, and online culture all reflect the aesthetic and emotional legacy of these characters. Gothic, punk, and urban styles trace directly back to 90s anti-heroes. Audiences don't just watch these characters, they identify with them. Ultimately, the anti-hero endures because they reflect something honest. They challenge us to empathize without idolizing, to understand without excusing, to see heroism not as perfection, but as persistence. Looking back, characters like Eric Draven, Blade, Wolverine, and Deadpool weren't just entertainment. They were cultural turning points. And that's the story of the anti-hero. From gothic vigilantes and brooding warriors to the morally complex characters who dominate media today. Heroism isn't about purity. It's about struggle, consequence, and choice in an imperfect world. So whether you're listening while you work, study, or relax, I hope this video gave you a deeper appreciation for why antiheroes resonate and why they're not going anywhere. Thanks for watching Comic Facts. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Because as long as the world stays complicated, our heroes will be too.